Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel, and today we are going to return to the Piccolo series. I kind of moved on to other things, so I come up with new ideas, but now I know what I need to do with this, so we're going to do another part. I plan on making this series a couple more parts long, including this one. I don't know how long, but we'll see how the story goes on. Now, as usual, you can support the video if you want, and let's move on to the what if. Last time Perfect Cell had emerged and had finally decided to make his play. Piccolo went to confront the monster, but then he got the explanation of who he was and why he was here. Piccolo didn't know exactly if he could take him, but he knew he had to try. The fight would finally begin after a long stare-off, and then Piccolo would easily get the upper hand. Cell would get in some lucky strikes, but it would be nowhere near the power that Piccolo could dish out. Even when Cell tried to drain energy from Piccolo, that would still not be enough. He would still keep on going, and he would end up being on the winning side still. Cell would do a solar flare, managing to escape, leaving Piccolo there to be eventually accompanied by Krillin and future Trunks. Piccolo would have explained everything that Cell would have said, and then Krillin and Trunks would have headed off to finish the current Cell. Meanwhile, Piccolo would go off to look for Cell, hoping that he wouldn't be too far away from where they fought. While the search for Cell would have begun, the androids would have their own search for Goku going underway. Goku would have managed to recover during this time, with everyone around him happy that he would have gotten better, but then he would have headed off to look for his friends. Krillin and Trunks would have managed to find and destroy current Cell, while also finding a way to maybe deactivate the android. And while everyone else would not be looking for Cell, he would have been going on and trying to absorb people to try and get more powerful. He would know that he couldn't defeat Piccolo or anyone else at his current level, so he would have to find someone powerful to absorb. And there would also be his ultimate goal, finding the androids. At some point, Goku would end up with Trunks and Vegeta, and he would explain to them a way they can train even harder and get a year's worth of training in one day. They would end up agreeing to the training, and Goku would bring them, Gohan, and some of the other Sea Fighters up so they can prepare. Piccolo would offer to go in with Goku and Gohan, but then they would explain that they would take him, but they can only bring in 2 people. In the end, it would be Vegeta and Trunks who end up going first, and they would end up doing their training while everyone else watched for Cell on the outside. During the search for Cell, they would also be looking out for the androids, and then eventually Piccolo would come across them himself. Piccolo would challenge them to a fight so he can defeat them and end the threat, and then eventually 17 would step up. Piccolo would be pretty confident going to the fight due to his strength, but 17 would have a major advantage over him, his infinite energy. So as the fight would go on, Piccolo would get the main advantage in the beginning, but then over time 17 would know that he would have the long-term advantage. Piccolo would start to realize this and know that he'd either have to use a big move right now or come back later with more energy. Piccolo would decide to gamble and would decide that he would try and use the special beam cannon, and he would taunt 17 into doing so. He would tell Android 17 that he would have a strong attack, that he wouldn't think the android would survive. The android's ego would end up getting in the way, and he would tell Piccolo to bring it on, and Piccolo would then start charging up the special beam cannon. Little did 17 know that Piccolo was far stronger than they thought, and that he had put most of his energy into the special beam cannon, and that when he finally launched it a couple minutes later, it would have been devastating. It would have almost immediately broken through the barrier as it touched it, and then went straight through 17's chest. And then he would have fallen to the ground with the other androids rushing to him. Android 18 would step up to get revenge for her brother, but then a voice could be heard in the distance that Piccolo would remember. Cell would step out from the shadows, being glad that Piccolo would have done the job for him, and then he would promptly proceed to absorb 17 without much of a resistance. Cell would begin transforming, and then he would emerge as a much larger and powerful being. Meanwhile, Capsule Corp, Bulma would have just finished the button to deactivate the androids, and she would give it to Krillin so he can do the job. It would have seemed like much more urgent matter because they would have sensed a large amount of energy coming from a little bit away. They could recognize Piccolo's key, but they wouldn't know what the other one would be, but they had an idea that it might have been Cell's. Goku, Krillin, and Gohan go to help Piccolo, while Vegeta and Trunks finish up their training. The androids at this point wouldn't much care about fighting them as everyone would arrive, and 16 would step up to protect 18 so he would fight Cell. Cell would end up trying to absorb 16, but he would realize due to his mechanical body, that shouldn't be his goal. Piccolo would have wanted to step in and fight, but he would realize after the special beam cannon, he would have no energy left to do any meaningful damage. Goku wouldn't think that he wouldn't have enough to damage him either, but he would end up assisting 16 in the fight for a little bit. While this would have been happening, Krillin would also still be tasked with this job of eliminating the androids, but right now, it wouldn't seem like such a good idea with 16 holding off Cell. Krillin also wouldn't think that 18 would have been as bad as in Trunks' timeline, so he wouldn't have wanted to kill her based off of that. With both Goku and 16 fighting him, Cell would realize he'd have to get out of this quickly so he can get to 18, and then he would jump in the air and try and Final Flash everyone on the battlefield. Luckily for him, his plan would have worked out, and then everyone would be temporarily blinded for a couple of seconds, and that would lead to him going to 18 and finally absorbing her to accomplish his goal. By the time everyone could see again, it would have been too late, and Cell would have already begun transforming to his perfect state. Perfect Cell would step out, and then he would look at everyone and realize that he would now have the full advantage. Cell would realize that none of them would be a match for him in this state, so he would give them 10 days so that they could train and get stronger. Goku would try and bargain with him though, that he would have to leave people alone for those 10 days, or else it would be off. Cell would be fairly certain that they wouldn't be able to beat him within those 10 days, but would agree to it anyways, as he would want a more sportsman battle. Cell would then leave, and then everyone would turn their attention to 16, who would be critically damaged from the Cell fight, and seeing as he's not much of a threat anymore, they would bring him to Bulma so they can heal him. After dropping Android 16 off with Bulma, they would head out to Lookout, and Goku would realize that they need a new Guardian for Earth, so he would head to New Namek, and then end up bringing Dende back so he could be the Guardian. While Dende would be getting set up as the Guardian, they would wait for Vegeta and Trunks to finish their training, which would be done not so long after, and they would walk out completely powered up. Updated about the situation, they'd be a little bummed that they couldn't get to fight Cell and see his perfect transformation, but they would be glad that they would get to see the tournament. Goku and Gohan would go inside the time chamber so they can get their training in, and then Piccolo and the others would decide to train on their own. With the Cell Games arrival not far from now, the Z Fighters would have to train their hardest so they could end up being a match for Cell. And with that said, this part is now over. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I like setting up the Cell Games here. It's a little interesting and it's a little different from the original show. I think the Cell Games are going to be a fun thing to do, and I'm probably going to end it there. I don't think I need to do a Boo arc, because that would just be kind of like a rehash more so than anything. So yeah, if you want to support the video, I would appreciate that, and I am out.